Okay, so today we're going to move into correlation coefficient, which talks about the strength of a relationship. Okay, the strength of a relationship. So I want you to think real quickly about relationships and think about a positive, strong relationship. So if it's a positive, strong relationship, you probably like the same things, you have things in common. Um, it just all in out works. Like your best friend, you probably have something in common. Or if you think about your grandparents, they have things in common, or a married couple, or some people in a relationship, they have things in common. They like the same things. Okay. And if we think about a negative relationship that's not very strong, maybe they don't like the same things or they like opposites. They don't necessarily have things in common. And if it's just some random person that you're meeting on the street and you're just having a conversation about, let's say, your favorite movie, you may have absolutely nothing in common. It may be completely random. Okay. So when we look at relationships, we actually can talk about how strong they are or how weak they are. Okay. So let's start with taking a look at this relationship, this graph. We can see that there is, we're talking about beach visitors, and we have average daily temperature and number of visitors. Okay, so we know that if we think about this, if it's cold, are you going to want to go to the beach? Probably not. But if it gets warmer, then we know that the more people are going to go to the beach. So we can say that this is a positive, pretty strong relationship. Okay, it's fairly strong. It's kind of a middle relationship in terms of strength. Let's just say that's medium strong. Okay, that's medium strong. And the reason that I know it's positive is because it's going up. The other way that I know that it's a medium strong is because the points are pretty close together. Okay, there is a definite pattern. They are pretty close together. It is easy for me to draw a line of best fit kind of through the center. Okay. And there's definitely a connection between the average daily temperature and the number of visitors. That makes sense. Okay. That makes sense. All right. Now, when we are talking about correlation coefficients, that is written or determined or labeled with the letter R. Okay, with the letter R. And they're either strong relationships or they are weak relationships or there is no relationship. Okay, and they sometimes are going to be kind of medium strong, medium weak, but you definitely are going to see a pattern in the scatter plot. Okay, you're going to see a pattern in the scatter plot. Now, when we measure correlations, it goes from a positive one, which is perfect strong, to a negative one, where it's perfect weak, and 0 is in the middle. Okay. So the closer to 0 I am, the less relationship I have. Okay. The less relationship. The more I am closer to positive one, the stronger. Negative one is weaker. Okay. Okay, so if I take a look at this graph, this is a perfect correlation coefficient of positive 1. Okay, it is a perfect positive. It is strong because the points are all in a line. So this is a perfect positive 1. The points are exactly lined up. Okay, they are in a line. It is easy to draw my line of best fit. And there are no outliers. Now, an outlier is a point that is just randomly on a graph completely off the normal trend. Okay, so an outlier is something that kind of sticks out away from everything else. So if all these points are in a line except for that one, that is the outlier. Something weird happened to that piece of data. Okay, so again, this correlation is a positive 1 because it is a going up, it is a perfect line. Nothing is out of the pattern. Okay, so let's take a look at how they range in terms of um, correlation. Okay, so positive 1 perfect, we know, is a straight line. So positive 1 perfect, that is going up in a straight line. No points are off the line, okay? Now, we can range between 0 and positive 1 and still have a positive relationship, okay? So let's look at these 3 different types. So it says this one is a high positive correlation, okay? You can see how the points are pretty close together. It's pretty easy for me to draw a line of best fit in there. This R value might be a positive 0.9, okay? Might be a positive 0.9, or it might even be an 8.5, okay? So it is pretty close to 1. It's not perfect because it's not a positive 1 because the points are not all on the line, but they are pretty close together. I see that they're in a pattern moving up, okay? Now let's come down here to the bottom. This is a medium positive relationship. So the points are more spread out than they are up here at the top with the high correlation. But you can still see I can draw the line of best fit. Okay, so this one might be like a 0.6. Okay, it might be a 0.6. The points are a little bit more spread out. Now, this one up here in the upper right-hand corner, this is a low positive correlation or a weak positive correlation, okay? Because the points are more spread out. We can see that there's more distance between the points and the line of best fit, okay? So this one might have a correlation of 0.2 or 0.25. It's getting pretty close to 0, okay? It's still positive because I can still see there's a pattern where everything is moving up and to the right. And I can still see a line of best fit can go in the middle, but the points are not close together. Okay, so the closer the points are together, the stronger the relationship. Okay, so now let's take a look at this one. So this is a negative correlation. And this is a perfect negative because exact line. And the correlation coefficient is a -1. Okay, because it's perfect. And I see that we're still in a line. It's easy to draw my line of best fit. And again, there are no outliers on this guy. Okay, there are no outliers. Remember, an outlier is a point that is completely off the normal track. All right, so let's take a look at these different types of scatter plots. Okay, so I have got a very strong negative here. And I see that because the points are really close together. So this one might be like a 0.95 negative, okay, because it's going down. This is a negative slope. My correlation is going to be negative. Now this one, I can still draw my line of best fit. They're still pretty close together, but they're not as close together as this guy. So this one might have a correlation of like negative 0.74, okay, negative 0.74. Still pretty strong, but not as strong as this one. And this one down here at the bottom, see how those points are really spread out? So this is definitely a weak negative correlation. This one might be a negative 0.15. Okay, negative 0.15. It's getting pretty close to 0. I can see that there is a pattern going negative, but it's pretty random. Okay, it's pretty random. All right, now let's take a look at this scatter plot. So this one kind of looks like I just took a paintball gun and shot all over the place. It's very random. And if I was to draw a line of best fit, I'd kind of put it in the middle. Okay, I would draw it probably someplace right in there, which means this is a 0 slope. Okay, and when we see something like this, it tells me that there is going to be no relationship. Okay, going to be no relationship. So the correlation coefficient is 0 or approaching 0. The closer to 0 I am, the less of a relationship there is. Okay, or the weaker the relationship is. And if I look at what this is comparing, it's comparing shoe size to IQ. Is there a relationship between how big my shoe size is and how smart I am? No, there's no correlation there. So it makes sense that there would be no relationship. Okay, so let's do some matching. Let's try to figure out which one of these is the strongest, the weakest, and where the correlations go. So I can easily see that this one at the top left, that is a perfect positive. So that is going to be my positive 1. And this one next to it, that is my perfect negative because it is going down. Okay. Now, which one of these two is going to be my negative 0.72? Well, which one has a more negative relationship? Which one can I draw a line of best fit and it is going to be negative? So that one, if I draw a line of best fit, probably is going to run me right through here. Okay. So the negative 0.72 is here. The line of best fit on this guy is going to run kind of through the center. So this one is approaching 0. Okay. Now, I know that this one is going to go through the 0 and it's going to have a slope of 1 over 1. Okay. 1 over 1. This one, its y-intercept is going to come up here and it's going to be determined my slope 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, negative 2 over 3. And it looks like I'm starting at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I can still come up with a slope and a y-intercept, and I'm not starting, I'm not seeing a positive pattern. All right, what about these guys? So I've got a positive 0.96, a positive 0.72, a negative 0.9, and a negative 0.42. So let's start by finding our positive relationship. So I see a positive here, and I think I see a positive here. Let's see if I was to draw a line of best fit on this one. I think I'm kind of heading in a direction that kind of looks like this. So that would be a positive. This one's going to be a positive. Which one of those two is the stronger relationship? Well, I'm going to say that this is my stronger relationship because the points are closer together. Okay. And this bottom one, I can still draw the line of best fit. They're still fairly close together, but they're not as tight as the 0.96. And let's take a look at these two. So I see that this one has like 3 points kind of in a line, and that one is super easy to draw a line of best fit. Those points are pretty close together. That one is going to be my negative 0.9. This one, negative 0.42, because yeah, I can draw a line of best fit, but those points are more spread out. It's getting closer to random, which means it's getting closer to 0. Okay, so remember, the closer to positive 1 and negative 1 I am, the more perfect my relationship is. Okay, the stronger my relationship is. The closer I am to 0, the weaker the relationship is. Okay, now, how do I know which one is actually stronger? So this one has a correlation coefficient of positive 1. This one has a correlation of negative 1. Does the strength of the relationship depend on the sign? No. The strength of the relationship depends on the absolute value of the number, or more how close to perfect it is. So these two are actually exactly the same strength. Okay, these are both perfect. Okay, they're both perfect. But let's take a look at these numbers. Okay, so we have to figure out which one is closest to perfect. And I see, remember, perfect is positive 1 or negative 1. So if I take a look at these, remember, this is going to be like 80 cents. This one is the closest to 0.1, or sorry, a positive 1. So the strongest relationship in the black set of data is the 80. The weakest is going to be 0.25 because it's closer to 0. All right, what about the negatives? Well, again, I'm looking for what is the closest to a negative 1. Closest to a negative 1 is that one, negative 0.98. That is the closest to negative 1. So this one's going to be my strongest. That one is going to be my weakest because weak is going to be approaching 0. All right, so now let's look at some positives and some negatives. So I've got negative 0.42, negative 0.78, 0.65, and 0.28. Remember, perfect positive is -1, or +1, perfect negative is -1. Which one of those values is closest to perfect? Well, I'm not going to be looking at these two because those are farthest away from +1 or -1. And I have negative 0.78, positive 0.65. I know that negative 0.78 is actually closer to -1. So this one is going to be my strongest relationship. Now it's going to be negative, but it's still going to be my strongest relationship, which means the points are going to be closer together. Okay. They're going to be closer together than they would be if it was a 0.65. All right, let's take a look at these guys. Let's see if we can match these up with what we're looking at. Determine which one is 0.5, which one is a 0.9. All right, so my correlation coefficient, we've got number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. So we've got a correlation coefficient of 0.1, 0.8, that's positive, a negative 0.9, and a 0.5. Well, I see that this one is clearly negative. And the only negative correlation coefficient I have is that one. So this one has to be C. And I see that those points are pretty close together. So that actually makes sense because negative 0.9 is pretty close to perfect. Okay, so now I have a 0.8, a 0.5, and a 0.1, and these are all positive. So let's start by trying to figure out which one is the easiest to draw the line of best fit. Looks to me like that one's pretty easy. Those points are pretty close together. So this one is actually B. Okay, that is a correlation coefficient of a positive 0.8. Now let's look at these two. Which one of those is the 0.5 and which one is the 0.1? Well, 0.5, that means there is still a positive relationship. I can see that if I was to draw a line of best fit, it would still go up. So this one is going to be the D. This one, if I draw a line of best fit, it kind of is approaching 0. There's no real place where there's a direct pattern here. So this one is going to have the correlation coefficient of 0.1. It's approaching 0. It's very random. Okay. Now remember that a correlation coefficient measures the strength of the relationship. Okay, that's what it measures. So if it is a strong relationship, I should be able to make predictions or give advice. Okay, because I should see a pattern. All right, which of these is the strongest relationship? Well, we have a 0.15, a negative 0.8, a 0.6, and a negative 0.25. The strongest relationship is negative 0.8. And I know that because it is the closest to -1. It's only 0.2 away versus the 60, that's 0.4 away from +1. So 0.8 is going to be the strongest of those relationships. Remember, the sign doesn't matter, okay? It's how close to perfect you actually are. All right, so let's see what you can do with correlation coefficients today and determining who is stronger, who is weaker, and do some estimations. And we are just about done with our stats unit.